Hi, this is Chris German from the Apartment Dealer, and with me today is Mr. Chris Handsel. Chris and his siblings recently sold a 6-unit property that they owned in the city of Whittier, and we were chosen to be their representatives. And we just wanted Chris to give us a firsthand take on his experience of our services, what it was like to go through the sales process. But before we jump to that, Chris, we'll have you say hello to the viewers and maybe tell us, how did you and your brother and sister come to own the property in Whittier?
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thanks. My siblings and I inherited the property. Actually, the property is in a trust, or was in a trust, and so we as trustees needed to sell it to pass on the proceeds to the beneficiaries. And so, I mean, it was my father's apartment. He owned it with my brother-in-law, and so that's how we came to be in control of that to be able to sell it.
Sure. And we weren't the first agent who you had chose. You actually were familiar with a different agent prior to us making each other's acquaintance. And so it was on the market prior to us listing the property. It didn't sell in that first round for whatever reason. There was some reluctance on the family, having just come out of that listing. It seemed like, and so weren't necessarily interested in putting it right back on the market. Maybe if you could just walk us through that decision of, what it was like having gone through, the property being expired, going through an expired listing. And then as you went through contemplating, okay, what do we do next? Do we list or not list the property a second time?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I think we were the problem with the first listing, and we're really a tough client. We were really tough to work with, because there wasn't necessarily agreement between all three of us on what we should do, how we should do it, and how quickly we should do it, or what should be the criteria for the sales. And the listing expired, and then we kind of languished. We kind of sat around and didn't know what to do. And Chris called us out of the blue. I guess I guess you found it on as an expired listing, and you said you could help us out. Is that right?
And I actually spoke with your brother, Jim, first. And it was interesting talking to the various siblings because, like you mentioned, one wasn't quite sure what the other one really wanted to do or how to get a grand vote, all, to move in one direction. So I began my conversations with Jim. Then you and I discussed the property, and then we went from there.
Yeah, so we're a tough sell again. So that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful and impressed that Chris got the job done, because it was we were tough.
But it was not an easy go. I mean, the property had some challenges. We had rental rates which were well behind market rates. I mean, to give our viewers some perspective, one of the 2-bedroom units was as low as $720, if you can imagine, for the city of Whittier, where more like, upwards of $1,600-1,700 would be the market in the city. And at the same time, to make matters worse, your building, while in the city of Whittier, is in the portion of the city which is under LA County unincorporated jurisdiction. And LA County unincorporated county has their own version of rent control, which is much more strict than the statewide version that we currently have. And to give people some perspective, right now under the statewide directive of rent control, you can raise rents annually 5% plus the cost of inflation. In LA County unincorporated, you can only raise rents as of now 3%. And there's even verbiage within the ordinance that says some years maybe you can only raise it 0%, depending on what happened year over year with inflation. So we have COVID, we have rent control. Essentially, so from a buyer's perspective, they're saying, hey, there's a lot of risk here. And that really was our challenge, because we had plenty of people interested in the property. But again, we were competing with these challenges that were outside of our control. So then we pivoted, and we began to discuss the idea of you and your siblings carrying back private financing. I felt that would help increase the number of offers. We, or you, I should say, would partner with them during this time of risk, in the sense that You were going to offer them a private loan so that they could reposition the property, be in a better position to refinance down the road. And I really felt that that would help the property sold. And eventually that is how the property sold. But I know that wasn't the first time that that idea had been shared with you. Actually, the previous listing agent had shared that idea, but it was under a much different structure. So maybe just your thoughts on the seller financing, why our structure worked versus the previous structure that was suggested.
Yeah, well, going back to some of the comments you made about rent control, we were really behind on our rent. We'd had some renters that had been in there for over 20 years, and we just hadn't kept up on rent increases over the years. But that didn't bother us. We didn't worry about that because there wasn't even a hint that rent control was going to be a problem. So when rent control became an issue in the state and in the county, that really caught us off guard, and we weren't able to get caught up with the rent income like we expected we'd be able to. We didn't, and then it became more difficult to move tenants out. It became more expensive, and so we really caught in a catch-22 where we couldn't ask for as much for the property as we might have, just because we didn't have a chance to get the rents up to par. And we did have some deferred maintenance. That was definitely one of the issues. We came a long way to cleaning the place up, but there's just some things we couldn't get done by the time of the sale. What you suggested was a compromise where we left enough cash in the deal that the buyer had a lot more skin in the game, and it was still attractive to our buyers because we were taking back paper. So, I mean, what you suggested was really kind of a compromise between a cash sale and a heavy owner finance sale, and it was a compromise that really made the deal work for us.
Yeah, and oftentimes when we suggest seller financing, when it fits, someone's investment plan, the first concern they have is, what if the buyer doesn't make good on the loan, on the mortgage payments? And in the first scenario that was suggested to you by the previous agent, I think it was only like 10% down. But in our case, the buyer ended up putting about 34% down, I think is what it worked out to be. So now they have hundreds of thousands of dollars into the deal. That buyer is going to figure out how to make the situation work, right? And so from a seller's perspective, or from both perspectives, for a buyer to maliciously enter into a contract to say, hey, I'm going to give you, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then not to make a payment again, it really is their loss, because not only do they lose the down payment to you, they give you the building right back. And you as the seller hold on to the initial down payment plus the building, which is the collateral. Now having gone through the entire process from working with us in the initial marketing, us fielding offers, going through the process with the buyers, negotiating back and forth. There was another agent who represented the buyer. What was your all experience of having worked with us?
Well, the thing that impressed me the most is that you just stuck with it. You kept fishing and fishing and fishing. So we actually turned down a couple of deals that to some of us looked perfectly legitimate. As a seller, we didn't perform very well in several of the instances, and you didn't lose patience with us. You just kept going back and looking for more buyers. And I was. One of the things that you said your office was doing was making phone calls in concentric circles, starting close into the property and then moving your way out. And that, anybody can say that, of course, but it really seemed like that's what was happening because you just kept bringing us buyers, and it really was amazing. I mean, that was the thing that I was most impressed with, is just your unbelievable tenacity. You just kept working on it until we finally got the deal done.